to Dr. Pep. I was gonna give it to him today. They have to do or something. What, did you send it to him already? Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm about to go check.
Okay, good. Yeah, they're not happy campers. Okay, hold on, let me put my stuff together.
We're not gonna have
Hello. Russ and I are checking the statute.
Yeah, well, we're here, Judge. Russ is checking.
Which,
Russ is right, I got you now. You're on, before, we're not, we're just checking on the legal provision. Just give us a second, please.
Okay, we're not live yet. We're not live, so I can say that I really miss Willie Hopkins being here, not being here. Miss Robert Civarelli. I mean, at least that'd be a sign of normalcy, right? That's like a.
No, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing the trick.
yeah.
Well, you know, Commissioner, other than you, Mr. Hopkins is the one person that I've been seeing for the last 60 years.
You used to see Mr. Hopkins back.
Yes, I mean, I know Mr. Hopkins since I've been elected. Every single minute.
So if you count that out, I bet you there's certain family members that you have seen less And you've seen Hopkins,
Correct.
an aunt or a second cousin.
Every week. And he always sits where the camera is on. So not only, you watch a video because you want to remember or see something, and he's right there. You see him the whole time.
You gotta tell.
So, I mean,
Judge to come, wait for connection.
For a legal provision, he's connected, he's in, just got a legal provision on street. Yes, sir.
and if we have,
Oh, no.
that's okay. Whatever you need to do, fine. I have my agenda here and all my notes here, but it's, sometimes I have to see some. As you can see, but you don't have to.
Do we have the public on the line?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, they're all there, everybody's in place, he just calls for.
Great. The court will please come to order. There is a quorum present. All of our court members are present, either in person or telephonically, which is allowed in these extraordinary times. All legal notices have been posted and the court is duly called. Is there a motion to open court?
So moved.
Second,
I'm sorry, John Wiley Price, move.
Elba Garcia, seconds.
Available, please open court.
Judge Carrier, please.
Oh, I beg your pardon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries unanimously. Available, please open court.
All rise. The Dallas County Commissioners Court is now in session for the March 2020 term. The Honorable Clayton Jenkins presiding. You may be seated.
And our invocation today will be given by a guest of Commissioner Daniels.
Good morning. I have the great honor to recognize the Stanley Victrum, who will share his thoughts this morning.
Certainly, good morning to the Commissioners Court, and certainly we want to thank Dr. Daniels for the opportunity to give the invocation. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. It's a day that seems to be so full of uncertainty. But God, we may not necessarily know typically what our future holds per se, but God, we do know who holds our future. That is you. And Father, we thank you even now that you will continue to guide us by your eye. Father, we ask that you bless each and every commissioner, County Judge Jenkins, Commissioner Dr. Teresa Daniels, Commissioner J.J. KOCH, Commissioner John Wiley Price, as well as Commissioner Dr. Elba Garcia. God, we ask that you bless these Solomon and Deborahs of this day. God, it wasn't this somewhat crisis may have snuck up on some people, but God, it did not surprise you. God, you have them here and anointed and appointed for such a time as this. Father, help them to flow together as one body, the body that will give hope to a community, oh God, that seems to be so shaken by this COVID outbreak. Father, we ask you to not only bless them, but also bless their families, who has to share them with the rest of the community. Father, we ask you to continue to help them be examples of hope. So as this community, God, will turn into a beacon of hope. Father, we ask you to continue to bless every worker that's working in public service during such a time as this, specifically those people that are working in the public health service, as well as the public safety service, as well as all the people that are working at every hospital, because they have to serve the public and then go back home to a families that's waiting for them for comfort and for encouragement. Father, give the commissioners a word of encouragement and help them to flow together as one body, God, that they might be able to deliberate sometimes over resources that seem to be so few for needs that seem to be so many. And Father, we ask that you bless them, oh God, so they might be able to come together in one focus and one purpose, oh God, to be able to see your perfect will be done for that Dallas County community. And let it all be so in the name of Christ Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much and for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Victrum. Beautiful words.
Okay, Judge.
9.
KOCH is the first resolution, and there are speakers on this resolution. We will read the rules of the quorum after the resolution is moved and seconded. Commissioner KOCH?
Yes. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas State Representative Raphael Anchia, Democrat, District 103, Dallas, and State Representative Morgan Meyer, Republican, District 108, Dallas, issued a joint statement on March 10th, 2020. And whereas the statement reads as follows. Faith in our government is only as strong as the integrity of our elections. Now is not the time to point fingers, assign blame, or play partisan politics, as our first priority must be restoring the integrity of last Tuesday's election. To this end, we would ask that Dallas County appoint a bipartisan review board to review the vote counting process, to audit the final election recount, and to confirm the final results. As leaders, it is incumbent on us to protect the very sacred right of voting, the quality of our elections, and the trust of our citizens in the democratic process. Our citizens deserve nothing less. And whereas today is the day to rise above partisan politics and partisan priorities and seek truth and transparency in elections, and to commit to the creation of a bipartisan review board to review the vote counting process, to audit the final election count, and to confirm the final results. And whereas trust in our government must be strong on every level, especially regarding elections, which is where much of the government begins. So it is critical that the public be provided with the following items by the Dallas County Elections Administrator before a bipartisan review board is appointed and begins work. A final audit log down to the precinct level of primary election results. Documentation of the chain of custody for the ballot boxes and the 44 flash drives from Election Day that were missing until the end of the final count on March 11th. Three, publicly reveal where the uncounted ballots from the results of the 44 flash drives were located. And 4, provide documentation of security on duty along with the dates and times provided per election code, section 127.1232 of Title 8. Presenting these items to the public will begin the process of restoring trust of our citizens in the democratic process. And whereas the nature of this committee should be of equal representation of Democrat and Republican parties, with both state and local stakeholders, should convene not later than the 1st of May, be titled Dallas County Bipartisan Election Review Board, and be governed by the Open Meetings Act. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the voters of Dallas County deserve transparency in their county elections department and the manner in which they conduct their elections, so that in accordance with the astute suggestions of Representatives Anchia and Meyer, this court should commit to the creation of the Dallas County Bipartisan Election Review Board to review the vote counting process, to audit the final election count, and to confirm the final results. And be it further resolved that this court will direct the County Elections Department to, 1, provide copies of the final audit log with precinct level data, 2, provide documentation of the chain of custody of the ballot boxes and the 44 flash drives from the election day until the final count on March 11th, 3, publicly reveal where the uncounted ballots from the results of the 44 flash drives were located, and 4, provide documentation of security on the duty and date times provided per election code 127-1232. Done so in open court. And I so move.
All right. Is there a second for this motion, or this resolution, rather?
I anticipated there would not be a second for this motion because it has been the will of this body to completely ignore the transparency and efficiency of elections. So I am completely unsurprised that a bipartisan call from both a respected Democrat and respected Republican in Dallas County be ignored. We continue to ignore our elections department and allow our people to suffer at the hands of incompetence.
Yes, Commissioner.
Judge John Price, under the rules, it dies for lack of second, even though there are individuals that have signed up to speak, but it dies for lack of second.
All right. So I'm going to ask the DA for an opinion on this. Here's my initial ruling based on our rules, but I'm happy to be as lenient as I can with this. Given that this is not an action, it's not a court order, it's a resolution that's died for lack of a second. My reading of the rules would be that the speakers would not be heard right now. They would be heard at the end of court along with other speakers. Do you agree, DA or Judge Roden? You think we can hear them now?
I think you should hear him now. The rule change.
Sounds good. Let's hear them now.
Yeah.
All right. Will the bailiff please read the rules of decorum for our public speakers?
All Commissioner Court attendees are hereby advised that this meeting is conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Dallas County Code, Section 74-71. Visitors and registered speakers are to preserve order and decorum at all times. Personal, profane, or slanderous remarks are not appropriate and will not be allowed at any time during this public meeting. Any and all applause to be kept brief in observance of time constraints. Disruptive visitors and or registered speakers may be removed and are subject to the penalties provided in the State of Texas Penal Code, Sections 38.13, 42.01, and 42.05. Registered individual speakers are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and the maximum discussion on any one topic is limited to 30 minutes.
Thank you. I did not see where I was sent, and perhaps I was, but I don't see the speaker list. If someone who has the speaker list, Commissioner Price, if you could read the name of the first speaker.
The first speaker judge signed up is Mrs. Jean Ball, and her address shows to be 3615 Oak Creek Circle in Dallas.
All right, Mrs. Ball, please come forward.
Mrs. Jean Ball did not answer.
Or hopefully you're coming forward on the phone. But are you there, Ms. Jean Ball, or are you on the call list?
She did not answer.
She did not answer, Judge. The next speaker is Ms. Bonnie Mathias of 904 Lufkin Street in Dallas.
That's me.
Microphone forward.
All right, go ahead, ma'am.
That I can hear you.
Good morning. I am I'm talking to you regarding the last primary election. You know, the Republicans have a serious issue when most of the locations that were not staffed by a Republican. And because we didn't have a Democrat to staff that, then we were unable to open that location at all. You know, I've seen a lot of finger pointing, but nothing really concrete to make things right this next time around. I hope that we can get folks together to make sure that we don't have a repeat of the election this last time. It was hard. I worked at the Democratic Party all day that day. On the election day, I answered tons of calls from people who were not trained properly, were not allowed to, people were not allowed to vote for whatever reason. It was insane. So I really hope that everybody will work together on the November election to make it a success, and we won't have the horrible waiting lines and other things that occurred on primary election day.
Mrs. Mathis, thank you. The next speaker is Mr. David Heffel. He shows an address of 1055 Regal Road in Dallas. Mr. Heffel? Mr. Heffel?
Mr. Heffley?
Mr. Heffley, are you there? Mr. Heffley there? And we ask Mr. Heffley to try to call back. The next speaker, Judge, is Monica Jackson, 219 Wood Hill in Mesquite, Texas.
She did not answer. She did not answer.
Jackson did not answer. The next speaker is Cynthia Smith at 1084 Cold Hall Drive in Cedar Hill.
Commissioner,
This-
Russ Roden, I'm sorry, it does not
yes,
appear
I am
that she
here.
was on this topic. She
Can
just
you
signed
hear
up
me?
for issues.
I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, you're not on this particular topic. Hold on just 1 second. The next one is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, but hold on. We need you to go back on hold, please.
It's really not clear, but
She said, hold on. Want me to
huh?
mute?
Hold on, Ms.
Really
Smith.
not clear, but
Ms. Smith, can you hold on?
okay, yes.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker on this topic is Mrs. Susan Fountain, 10630 Chesterton Drive in Dallas.
I'm here.
Okay, Ms. Fountain.
Good morning. To think that two of our state elected officials see the need for this type of resolution is the most disconcerting statement on our Dallas County Elections Department I have ever seen in my 39 years of residence in Dallas County. Texas election code set the tone to which the Dallas County Elections Department should adhere in the interest of our most precious right, the right to a free and fair election. Tony Pippin's pool picks and chooses which to follow and thumbs her nose at the rest. My concerns from poll watching at Central Count on February 28th and 29th are as follows. Number one, The chain of custody between early voting locations and central count was compromised, and the flash drives were taken to Carrier 1 prior to being brought to central count. This is in violation of Chapter 33.056A of the Texas Election Code, which allows a poll watcher to watch any tabulation activity of central count. The control plan for the March 2020 primaries specified that early voting flash drives would be delivered to central count, not Carrier 1. Due to lack of public notice, no presiding, alternate judges or poll watchers were present at this early vote drop-off location. 2, I personally witnessed that El Centro's and University Park Methodist early voting locations' flash drives were opened, tampered with, and reinserted into the wrong carrier bags and then brought to central count. This action is indefensible and immediately also calls into question the validity of the results of the other 43 flash drives. 3, upon periodically being brought to central count in batches, the 45 flash drives were input into 1 to 3 computers with no signs of being tabulated or interfacing with any computer program. There is no interactive program on the screen that indicates anything other than flash drives being copied. As soon as the flash drives were completely downloaded, central count was closed and poll watchers were not allowed access again until Monday, even though Dallas County election workers were allowed access. Tony Poole refused to post a guard over the voted ballots during the 5 days of tabulations in violation of Chapter 127.1232 of the Texas Election Code. Number 5, Dallas County Elections Department refuses to provide a proper audit log in violation of Administrative Rule 81.62. The lack of a true and correct audit log raises major red flags as to the validity of the March primary election. Tony Pippins Poole should be immediately relieved of a position as Elections Administrator of Dallas County Elections Department. Lack of transparency and incompetence must not be tolerated, and I call for a full investigation of the March 3rd primary election. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Fountain. Our next speaker on this topic is Mr. Mac Smith, 3938 Vinecrest Drive in Dallas.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir. All right. I was a Republican. You ready?
Yes, sir.
I was the Republican election judge for Precinct 2006 in the last election. I want to share my experience with you and offer some lessons learned. There was confusion among the county workers when I picked up my supplies on Sunday and when I dropped them off on Tuesday night. Ordinarily, they do much better than that. I think it was partly because they were trying to push out new equipment and also because they had to do 2 elections at once. Now, I understand there was also confusion among some of the election workers on election day. These new machines are not particularly complicated, but it is hard to do it perfectly when you only do them 1 day a year. The lessons learned. In your efforts to make voting easy by adding machinery, you have created lines and confusions at the polling places. It's not a good trade. It is not a great sacrifice to vote at your precinct on election day, and we should go back to it. Part of the problem is having separate polling for Republicans and Democrats. You don't have enough experienced help to run 2 elections on the same day. I was asked to combine both the Democrat and Republican elections in my precinct. I said it was okay with me. If it was okay with the Democrats, it was okay with me. We did it. Everything worked fine. I was given 6 electronic polling books. I only used 3. We needed 2, but one broke down. We had to open up another one. The tech got the broken one working. Otherwise, we would not have been able to print the polling list from it. The hotspot held 2 Epson printers. There were only 2, and we could have not used more than 2 polling books at one time. Also, the hotspot showed up on my phone as a network. Everyone has the same password, so about 1,000 people had it. Now, I did not try to hack in, but I wondered if you could. If someone did, there are 2 possibilities. One is someone adds or subtracts voters. The other is they crash the system. If the system crashes, the polls are out of business. And how will that look on the front page of the Dallas Morning News? I want you to listen to this closely. We handled 335 voters with 3 voting machines. No one waited more than about 10 minutes, but we rarely had an open machine. Each machine can handle about 100 votes per day. If we have 500,000 voters on election day for the general election, we will need 5,000 voting machines. Do you have that many? If not, you should start thinking about how to get them or go back to marking paper ballots. To end on a bright spot, I want to commend a lady in the elections department named Beatrice Kirk. I spoke to her several times on election day. She always answered the phone. She had the answers to all my questions but one. On that one, she said she would find out, and she called me back a few minutes later.
Mr.
I
Smith,
greatly
let me
appreciate
ask you,
that.
Mr. Smith, let me ask you to wrap it up. Okay, are you finished? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. The next registered speaker on this topic is Mrs. Beth Beasel. She shows an address of 3608 Southwestern Boulevard in Dallas, Texas. Ms. Beasel, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm here. Are you ready for me?
Yes, ma'am.
The rollout of the new voting equipment and vote centers for March 3rd election was a disaster. Who can trust these election results when so many things failed? For example, the 4-hour delay for equipment pickup because patches were still being done by ES&S, the continual breakdown of all the equipment at one point or another, and the absence of necessary materials for conducting the election, including no provisional supply bag, no ballot and seal report, no ballots in my shoulder bag, and no voter rosters. Who can trust these election results when no result tapes are printed at the close of early voting? We judges handle all manner of sensitive information, so I'm not buying the excuse that it's because we don't want the results leaked out, especially when it's a Class A misdemeanor to do so. With no printed tapes, anyone during the 4-day period between the close of early voting and election night can manipulate those vote results any way they want without ever having a paper audit trail to worry about. Who can trust the election results when the Cradle Point Wi-Fi can be hacked into by a 6th grader in about 5 minutes flat? Even DOD can't secure the air, and there's no way I can believe that Dallas County elections can. Who can trust the election results when I couldn't even get my own numbers to reconcile between the DS-200 votes, the voter roster names, and the voter tickets? Who can trust the election results when no one has proven that the barcodes on the voted ballots reflect the actual votes made by the voter? Who can trust the election results when the personnel at the regional drop-off sites were rude, careless, and haphazard as they handled the voted ballots and unused ballots? After the fiasco with the 44 flash drives suddenly appearing, after the inaccurate statements being made at the court hearing concerning the reopening of the election and the dubious role of Carrier 1, I have absolutely no confidence in the integrity of the March 3rd election, nor the 2018 election, nor the upcoming November election. In light of these numerous points of failure, the vulnerability of our elections in Dallas County demands serious changes. First, stop countywide vote centers. Second, remove the current elections administrator and her protector. Third, remove all the current IT personnel. Fourth, for early voting and election day, return to pen and paper ballots that can be counted by hand and that can be used during a power outage if one should occur. Fifth, hire an outside independent firm to do a complete investigation on the elections personnel, the elections procedures, the vote data, and the chain of custody of ballots and the flash drives. As they say, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night, and something is wrong.
Ms. Beasel, can I ask you to conclude?
I couldn't hear you. Say again?
Yeah, you need to conclude. Your time is on this particular topic. Is Liz Beasel, and it shows, she shows to be residents at 3608 Southwestern Boulevard in Dallas. Miss Liz,
Yes.
Liz.
I'm here as well.
Okay, Ms. Beasel, your 3 minutes, your time is begun.
As an election judge, I experienced many unacceptable procedural issues during the March 3rd primary election. With the new election equipment, the check-in process during early voting and election day takes much longer. In early voting, on the old system, I could check in 3.5 voters per minute, whereas the new system requires 2 clerks to check in 1 voter in 1 minute. I timed it. The overall process is inefficient and tedious. Setup and closing take so much longer with the new equipment, and we don't get paid for those extra hours. In fact, getting paid for a maximum of 14 hours is now totally unrealistic and unfair. Other issues include express vote printers did not work at 7 a.m. on election day when the lines were longest and the people were the most hurried to vote. E-poll book username and password was changed. No one told me. Phone calls to the warehouse for tech support went unanswered, and sometimes, after being on hold for up to 25 minutes, the line hung up. Field tech support didn't come until 5 hours or later after I called them. And to some locations, they only came once. Ballots stuck together. Clerks would give voters 2 ballots on accident, then jam the express vote machine. There were not enough power outlets in many locations to accommodate the new equipment. One location had only one power outlet. EP scanners didn't work at all during election day and sporadically at other locations. The Epson vote printer would randomly print some tickets and then would randomly print duplicates. I could go on and on with the problems that I encountered in early voting and on election day, but I don't have enough time for that. The bottom line is that the decision to go with this new election system has been too costly, too complicated, and too inefficiently rolled out. With so many weaknesses in this new system, I have no confidence in the integrity of the election results. Cut your losses short. Give us our pen and paper ballots and go back to precinct voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beasel, Liz Beasel. The next speaker on this particular topic, Judge, is Mr. Wes Bowen, B-O-W-E-N, 9427 Windy Knoll Drive in Dallas. Mr. Bowen?
Yes, Judge, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the judge can hear you. We all can hear you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Wes Bowen, and I'm the Ballot Integrity Chair for the Dallas County Republican Party. In that role, I often get election judges call me after Election Day to go over the problems that they had in the polling locations during the most recent elections. After this primary election on Election Day, I got more feedback of complaints of equipment failure in the field than I've ever heard after an election. I found it strange since we had brand new equipment. I heard stories of the DS-200 tabulators that didn't work. They'd be plugged in by the judge in the morning and they would never come on, or they would just buffer. And calls to the warehouse by Judge Garland would result in a technician not showing up until 3 p.m., which would seem to indicate that there are a lot of problems with the election equipment if you couldn't get a technician for 9 hours. I heard lots of problems with the electronic poll books or the iPads. I heard stories of the e-poll books overheating and shutting down. At one point in time, for example, this was actually during early voting, however, at the Lockwood Library, they had as many as 3 shut down at one time. And you could visit actually with the ES&S tech, Robert Prince, I think is his name, about this problem, if you're interested in getting more detail, because Robert was apparently at the Lockwood Library literally every day of early voting and was never able to fix the problem. The reason I think this could have contributed to the reconciliation problem is that every time the problem would occur, it caused the election worker to have to restart the machine, and the judge would have to put his code in to start over. And so sometimes the machine would not sync properly when they started back up, and judges could not get the count on the e-poll book to match that on the public count on the DS-200 tabulator. Another issue was the apparent lack of organization and supply pickup, as people have mentioned. I heard of at least one judge that quit and never claimed her equipment at supply pickup after having waited 4 hours. They just couldn't wait any longer and abandoned their obligation. Another judge had to leave after also waiting for 4 hours and getting no equipment. She had to leave for a family birthday get-together because it was her birthday and she had family that traveled a long distance. So her election supplies were actually showed up at her house the next day, delivered by an actual road and bridge truck. So after having heard of all these problems, I was surprised to hear that the conclusion being drawn was that there weren't enough Republican judges, especially since the number of Democrat primary tabulators recounted was exactly equal to the number of Republican primary tabulators recounted. Somebody much smarter than me once said you cannot fix a problem until you identify it. So I'm hoping by pointing these things out to you will help you start down the path of fixing the real problems. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Boyne. We appreciate it. The last speaker on this particular topic is Ms. Helen Mae Nichols, 3620 Long Court Circle in Mesquite. Ms. Nichols, are you available?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Commence.
Okay, thank you. I'm Helen Mae Nichols of Mesquite, Texas, and I have been an election judge for many years and working with the elections. And I want to thank Tony Pippins-Poole for the fine job she's done in the past. But this election, unfortunately, was exactly the opposite of how the elections have been handled. And I just want to mention one or two things. There is a lack of accountability for the judges when we were picking up our supplies. There was no one to check us in, and there was no one to check us out. And also on my DS 200 counter, I had two of them because I was asked at the pickup place if I would be the election judge for the Democrats as well as mine for the Republicans. I said yes, not knowing exactly what I was getting into, but I did anyway. And when we were first opening the DS 200, there was no lock on door 1, and that particular lock number is required on the gold ballot and seal form. And there was a lock on the one that was designated for the Democrats. So it's just a fact. I'm just saying a few facts and what I observed, and I'm really saddened to have to report this because I would love to give a good report of the Dallas County Elections Department. But my experience, and I was actually working with a young student, and she was seeing all of this that was going on, and she, she was watching what we were doing, and I don't know how this affected her. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate this time to talk about my experiences, and I agree with all. I'm thankful that all the other people that have gone before me and mentioned things that I observed also. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Judge, that on this matter, registered speakers, unless Ms. Jean Ball is on the line now, or Mr. David Haley is on the line now, or Ms. Monica, no, not it, that's it, and Max. That's it.
Was it Max Smith?
Max Smith, we've done Matt. He was there. Yeah, I circled him. We got him. So, Judge, that concludes the speaker list for what regards to this subject.
Well, thank you, and thanks for reading the speakers. I want to take a moment of personal privilege, if I can, before we move to presentations, just to thank all of our Dallas County employees and all of our Dallas County elected officials. You're all working extremely hard, and you've all stepped up to help protect not just our Dallas County employees, but all the people in Dallas County, and the work that you're doing as a model for tax offices and clerk's offices and jails and just county government for the rest of the state. I know a lot of people are getting very little sleep working on this. This is going to be a long deployment, and as we're doing today, we still have our other obligations and duties as well. So I would hope that people would unplug from this, spend some time with family, do try to get some sleep. But I just can't tell you how proud I am of each and every one of you and the great work that you're doing. I'm having a hard time sharing the meeting by phone because of the audio quality. So at this time, I would ask Commissioner Price to take the position of chair and chair this meeting.
Thank you, Judge. And to my colleagues, two things. First of all, let me just, if any of my colleagues have a comment regarding the matter, I did want, for the record, with regards to the resolution, with deference to my Commissioner, J.J. KOCH, I wanted the record to be real clear about what happened with regards to the 453 vote centers for the presidential primary. The Republican Party filled less than 35% of the 453 vote centers. We started with 300 unconfirmed assignment per the emails. We decreased 273, which were partially confirmed a week before the election, and then we were down to 168 that were finally placed on election day with 157 Republican judges to show up for work for the Republican presidential primary election. The Democrat Party placed 381 judges out of the 453 vote centers, and 285 of the election vote centers for both Democrat and Republican elections. So at the end of the day, the issue seems to be one of logistics and whether or not we had sufficient personnel to be able to manage the election. And so it's my understanding, if the court has no issues, Ms. Jean Ball has joined us. She did sign up, and I don't know where she had some conferencing problems.
Hello?
But hold on, Ms. Ball. But Ms. Ball is on the line. Mrs. Jean Ball shows an address of 3615 Oak Creek Circle in Dallas. And Ms. Ball, you have 3 minutes.
Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Jean Ball.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, thank you, Judge. I just wanted to make a couple of general statements, and I've been happy to answer any questions anyone has. I'm the elections director at the Dallas County Democratic Party, and I feel that we've all been beaten up a whole lot, including everyone. It was a hard election, and there are certainly lessons to learn. I also think it is there is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy going on here, and I would appreciate the fact that it is that I don't think anyone involved is intending to not try to find out where the weaknesses are and try to make the appropriate improvements to make it robust. Our end result here is to provide a place for Dallas County voters to vote at the highest level of professionalism, convenience, and friendliness, and we need to do that. I think we've made great strides and great progress in providing that, and I think that we take care of what our glitches are, if they are there, and we go on. And I think that voting centers are to be something that we need to maintain and retain for the value of every Democratic or every voter in Dallas County leaving that place knowing their vote has been cast and with the assurance that it's been cast the way they want it to be cast and that it was a positive experience. And we just need to carry on with that mission and find what's wrong and fix it, and we can do that. And those are my statements.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Balls, for your comments. The court, we have expended 24 minutes on this matter.
Like to
Yes,
say
please. No,
something,
you have to.
Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Commissioner Koch.
Dr.
and-
Garcia, can you identify yourself
Dr.
and
Alba
speak into
Garcia,
the mic?
Dallas County Commissioner for District 4. I just want to put into the record something that I think is important. And first of all, thank you to all the callers that took the time to be here waiting to make their voices heard. I mean, as Commissioner Koch mentioned, this is the heart of what democracy is, and I totally agree with that statement. However, I do want to say that much of the problems and confusions that we have during this last election was by holding two separate primaries. I think Ms. Tony Pippin's pool offered both parties the option of holding joint primaries elections at the initial meetings for the primaries. And Dallas County Republican Party refused to have a joint primary. The Democratic Party, if I remember correctly, was very open to the idea. At no point during the both Center Advisory Committee meetings did any of the Republican members, which we have bipartisan committee, ask for both center locations to be eliminated or reduced. First time they brought this up was less than a month before the election. The Democratic Party recruited 381 judges, 285 held both parties' primaries. I mean, this has never been seen before. 96 only held one primary. So, you know, I do have to say that the Republican Party recruited only 168 judges, less than half of the Democratic recruitment effort. 72 of them held both parties. 96, most of them, hold their own. So the department was forced, and Commissioner, you know this because you were, you know, with us when we passed the $400,000 to grab temporary workers, emergency judges, county employees, and others that had absolutely no experience and received minimal training at the last minute. I have to say that, you know, Dallas County Elections Department did a fabulous job under the circumstances that we were forced to work on. Both parties have observers in the recount, you know, in the central counting station, they watch what everything was happening. While there was human error at the front and the end of the tabulation process, which was caused mainly by the lack of qualified and experienced election judges, the system itself actually worked the way that we expected it to. And thanks, you know, to everybody that gave their input that we needed a paper trail voting system because it worked. The reconciliation audit process that was put in place cut all the discrepancies between voters checked and votes cast, allow the workers to identify the problems and resolve the issue. So in closing, I just want to say that the Citizens Election Advisory Committee, which is the group that all of us appoint people to work and serve, which is bipartisan, will meet on April 1st via teleconference to examine the March primaries and the issues surrounding any discrepancy or any questions that might arise. This is a bipartisan committee, as I just said, and each of us have appointees. To create another board just for politics or, you know, perception, you know, I think is wrong. I want to thank all the voters of Dallas County and, of course, all of you colleagues, because we wanted more people to vote, and guess what happened during the last election? We had more people voted than ever before. And I'm going to disagree with some of the comments that we just hear about going back to paper and pencil. But guys, and you know this, Commissioner Koch, you are the IT vice chair. We don't even have companies that do paper and pencil election systems anymore. I think that what we need to do is start working together as a group, both parties, Republicans and Democrats, in unity for making this a better process, considering the strains that we have during the first election with a new system, with a new way of voting in 453 locations. Mr. Pippins-Poole, congratulations, and thank you to you and all the efforts to move forward, work together, and make democracy better and more transparent in Dallas County. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
The chair recognizes Dr. Teresa Daniels. She wants.
Good morning. This is Teresa Daniel, Commissioner from District 1. Just a couple of items on this. I would like to emphasize that each one sitting at this table has central to our way of doing business the integrity of the election process, recognizing that it is, in fact, a central part of democracy in the United States of America. One of the advantages of the new machines that were put into place also was the paper trail that was insisted upon and in fact happened, so that we do have that ability to not only count the ballots electronically, but can also recount the ballots with the paper documents that have been produced. There is also a step in the process where each of the voters would be able to verify that the ballot that they inserted in the box was exactly how they had voted. So that part of the integrity was very much intact. Would also like to say that regarding the resolution itself, I respect Commissioner Koch and his ability to say what he would like to do, but would also make note that many of the parts of the resolution are already in process, so they are not new additions to anything, and I don't see where the change in the process is. I would like to commend Tony Pippins-Poole on being able to balance not only the new machinery, change in how the elections department does their business as far as the location of where they work from, as well as so many of the other changes going on. Thank you very much for all of the election judges and clerks and residents of Dallas County who spent time throughout the early vote process and the election day to make sure that, in fact, this allowed citizens their right to vote in a fair and reasonable way. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes Commissioner J.J. Koch.
Colleagues, I'd like to clarify a couple points for the record. First, there is ample evidence via emails that the Democratic Party refused to hold a joint election. So it is not entirely the Republican Party's fault in that regard. Secondly, SEAC does exist. We appoint members to that board, but is not met in well over a year, almost now 2 years. It has not been called to meet and not been given its opportunity to do its job. That is a serious failing and must be addressed. Before we continue to praise the elections department, it is absolutely essential that, clearly everyone here is on the record that elections did everything right. If elections keeps going down the direction that it's headed right now, November will be another disaster. If you don't agree that this March 3rd was a disaster, then you're not listening to speakers like Ms. Mathis, who said that people were not trained properly. It was insane. There were horrible lines. She is speaking on behalf of Democrats. And lastly, I want to address the idea that somehow the shortage of Republican judges was the problem. There was 168 Republican Party judges. We anticipated early in the process last fall having 230 Republican judges. Late in the process, the two people that work for the Republican Party in Dallas only got commitments from slightly less than 200, and 168 ended up showing up at the end of the process. So those in the Republican Party in Dallas will absolutely admit to that failing, but they were clear throughout the entire process that this was going to be a problem for them. They had never had over 230 folks doing a primary election in the past. That had never been the case. There had never been more than 230, at least in recent history, and probably throughout Dallas County's entire history. And the main question that everyone has to ask is, how would more Republican judges have helped the March 3rd disaster, right? The problems that led to March 3rd, it started with training. Classes were too full and people were unable to attend because they were too full. The trainers from elections were inadequate, so the ones from ES&S had to be brought in. How would more Republican judges have helped? Individuals were not directed on how to redirect people to open locations. They were not trained on those pieces, so ad hoc, they were trying to get people to the website that they weren't really fully aware of in many of those spots. Again, regarding training, there was no training for one party having to set up the two counters. So both Democrats and Republican judges struggled with that. How would having more Republican judges avoided that part of the March 3rd disaster? Dallas County Elections was 4 hours behind in its supply pickup, leading many people to leave and have to come back and be terribly worn out even before the process started. Again, how would more Republican judges have helped that? There was too much stuff to fit into many cars. A number of people had to take numbers of trips, and some of them could not get all the items, and had Dallas County Elections had to deliver items to some folks at their homes because of this inadequate logistic problems. Again, how could more Republican judges would have helped that? There was missing gray boxes, the boxes with supplies. We were missing the entirety of the boxes. How would more Republican judges help that? There was items, very particular and important items, missing in the gray boxes. And that, again, was for both Republicans and Democrats. How would more Republican judges have helped that? Many were not asked to sign in for their equipment according to statute. Again, how would more Republican judges have helped that? Most that were going to be doing joint primaries learned at pickup that they would be doing both parties and had not been trained properly on doing both parties and did not know exactly how to do that and never got answers on how to do that. Again, how would more Republican judges have helped that? The red bags were not sealed and had the wrong vote center info in more than 20 instances. How would more Republican judges have helped that? Dallas County Elections helpline was overloaded quickly at the beginning of the day. How would having more Republican judges calling that line helped this situation? There was not enough plugs for the machines. Those gray boxes, again, were not properly packed. So for the electronics, many of them had to just simply remain unplugged because they didn't have enough places to plug them into in the locations that they were. How would having more Republican judges help that piece? Many instances, there were the missing power cords, printers, and forms. Again, how would more Republican judges have helped that piece? There was, of course, as we heard, numbers of equipment failures. Firstly, poll books were overheating. I don't think having more Republican judges would have helped that. Poll books were slow to sync and caused a bottleneck and caused those lines. How would more Republican judges have helped that? Ballot marking devices did not fully print on a number of instances, particularly when the machines were late in the day. People had to call in for that. How would more Republican judges help on that piece? Tabulators were jammed and went down in many locations. Those calls were not prioritized in a number of those locations. Cardboard boxes were set out for the ballots to be placed in and scanned later in clear violation of election law in both Republican and Democrat precincts. How would having more Republican judges help that one? There was turn-in issues, clearly by the lost 44 drives. There was unclear instructions, and again, because there were so many problems at the end of the day, people calling in, there was not enough bandwidth to help those both Republican and Democrat judges that could not properly hand stuff in. And when you look to the 44 missing precinct boxes, it was a Republican and Democrat problem. It was clearly, adding more Republican judges would not have solved that problem. Of those 63 Dallas County election places that had to be filled, 52 spots for Democrats, 11 spots for Republicans. So despite the fact that, yes, the Republican Party had a lot less folks there, we only were a burden in 11 places where the Democrat Party was a burden in 52 places. And as exhibited by the numbers that we were given by the Elections Department, the Republican Party did step up and checked in both parties in 72 locations. And lastly, you know, the Republican Party is certainly a weakened animal in Dallas County, and we've been treated with nothing but rudeness by this election department, so many individuals no longer want to play the role of election judge because they're not in it for the money. They get slow paid and they get harassed. So, you know, you get what you pay for, and when you pay people in derision and essentially hatred, of course they're not going to show up to take more abuse. I said it before this election, you bought it. You bought these problems. The Republican Party did not push this upon you. This was a self-created disaster. Nothing here that has been said is admitting that we had a disaster, an unmitigated disaster, and I can confidently say to the people of Dallas County, if nothing changes, November will be a disaster, and people will essentially lose their voting rights because of our inability to deliver it to them.
Let me thank my colleague. Let me do some concluding remarks. First of all, early voting and the general in November is the prerogative strictly of the Elections Department represented by Dallas County. The primaries, I agree with you, Commissioner Koch, both parties declined to have a joint election. But one of the things Republicans have always known how many election sites there would be for Republicans who had previously worked elections and told us that they weren't even called by the Dallas County Republican Party. 2 days before the election, 65 judges did not pick up their polling boxes. And so let me just say, it's interesting, Ms. Pippin's pool has been there 31 years. It's only in so-called partisan elections that we seem to have some kind of ink. In even number of years, she holds approximately 7 to 8 elections by the election code as a contractor. In odd number of years, she holds approximately 4 elections by contract. We never, ever have any concerns with regards to those elections. It only when it comes to the so-called Republican and Democrat. Let me assure the public in November, that is not the case. The Elections Department will be clearly in charge. They will be responsible for getting not only the judges, but the locations right now. And of course, I'm going to put in a commercial announcement here. I'm hoping that we're going to be talking about a lot of mail ballots, but that's a whole nother deal. But yeah, one of the things that I do want to say though, if we are in charge in November, and we are in charge in early voting. Early voting, I understand we didn't have but 28 locations. No problems. We use the same basic machinery. No problems. And so all I'm saying is that the Elections Department, when they're in charge of getting the locations, when they're in charge of training and knowing who the judges are in that much advancement, then there has historically been no issues. And I do want to join my colleagues in commending. It was extremely difficult. Unfortunately, in this country, you only have basically 3 election machine providers, and it's my understanding that the one that we chose has basically 80% of the market share. Though one of the callers talked about the backup. They recommended that we purchase backup because of the speed in which technicians could get to the sites. And that's the reason we had backups. But as Dr. Garcia said, we knew about a week out that we did not have sufficient personnel based on the number of precincts that we had promised the voters that we would have in terms of access. And this court appropriated almost $400,000 to be able to try to get that personnel. So I think this court has been responsible in terms of trying to make sure that the voters had access as we had promised.
And I just want to close with, Commissioner Koch asked a question. How will more Republican judges could have helped? Many times. My answer is by having more experienced people, working with us to have a better election. And that will be upon the Democrats and Republicans working together. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. The next matter and thank you to all the callers for your participation. The next matter will be delayed is a resolution that I have with regards to a 33-year employee retiring, and we will delay that for another day. With regards to the presentation on cause number DC 20-03724, the interstate of Texas and the notice of the hearing, again, I think pretty much some of the same matters, and so therefore no need to deal with that. If the court will permit, there is amendment to the Dallas County emergency plan that is part of our agenda, and so I think it's item number 45 that was added as emergency last night. It does comply with the notice of 1 hour. Therefore, either Dr. Wong or Judge, I don't know if you're still on with us with regards to this item that was placed on our agenda last week.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the
Yes,
rules to take this out of order.
court members.
Okay, Judge, hold on one second. Commissioner Koch made a motion. We suspend the rules so we can take item 45. Can I get a second?
Second.
Got a second from Commissioner Dr. Teresa Daniels to suspend the rules. Is there any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by the usual sign of voting.
Aye.
Those who oppose, same sign. Chairs in the affirmative. Okay, Judge.
This is an item that the DA believes is necessary to clarify the powers are in place to enforce certain fines should it be necessary to ticket individuals who do not follow the Safer at Home order. I would just remind people, I know the public's on the line, some of you may have been stopped this morning by officers. I know there was a lot of enforcement this morning, but we just don't have the manpower to go out and enforce. So although we're asking the court to do this today, so that it'll be stronger ability to fine those if necessary. Our goal is not to fine people. Our goal is for the community to come together and do this. We need those first responders, stopping violent crime, keeping you safe. These are the folks that are going to go lay hands on people who are sick and help them. And so we're going to see some of those first responders get sick. That's going to leave us with less people. So we would just really ask the community not to waste our police resources having to chase you down to follow the Safer at Home order. We're asking the Commissioner's Court today to make this amendment that the DA thinks is necessary to clarify the authority on the fines. That's it.
Okay, the order item number 45 Is there any further discussion with regards to this emergency order?
Commissioner, Mr. Chair, if we could also at this time have a presentation from Dr. Wong
Yes.
on the status
That would
of
be
the,
helpful. I do have a question about item 45, Elba Garcia, District 4. I do have a question about item 45. Just you say it's just going to be enforcement, and you have talked to all the public, all the police departments in Dallas County. This has been vented, and they know about this, right?
Judge?
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing. I can hear you repeated, Commissioner.
Dr. Garcia asked that you have vetted this with all the law enforcement agencies in Dallas County and the sheriff, and they are aware of this matter.
Yes, the law enforcement agencies are aware of the fact, and actually this morning are being more aggressive in stopping people than either I or Chief Hall and most others intended. But yes, they are very aware.
Okay, Dr. Wong, with regards to this amendment to the Dallas County Emergency Management Plan, name for the record and who.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Phil Wong, Dallas County Health and Human Services Director. I think pretty much for this particular topic, the judge addressed all of the issues on that. In terms of an update regarding our COVID-19 status, this is before the official release, but essentially we're going to be reporting, I think, 26 new cases today, total of 181, as well as our 5th death in a woman in her 70s with high risk chronic medical conditions. I think the number that I'm reporting today is conditional and has some caveats in terms of some of the other reporting through some of the drive-through clinics and others. The methods for that reporting is still being processed and worked, as well as some of the delays in getting some of those lab tests back. So I think our official number will be 26 today, but again, that has some caveats in terms of interpretation. The one thing I wanted to just clarify or provide some information that Judge Jenkins and I had mentioned last night with the update on the order. I know during yesterday's session there were some questions regarding some of the data and the numbers and some of the modeling. So each of you has that on your table. It was there at the beginning. Just to show, and this is pretty straightforward math in terms of what this shows is on this chart, the population for Dallas County is broken down by age groups in that second column. So it goes from under 10 to 80 plus, with a total population of Dallas County of about 2.586 million. Then that third column, and there are 2 scenarios that I've got the data for, is if there were a 40% prevalence. So it's essentially just multiplying 40% of each of those population age groups.
Why is 40% big?
Again, in yesterday's discussion of the modeling, one of the worst case scenarios, if nothing happened, was that we would get to a 70% prevalence. Then if we implement the stay home, stay safe, that our goal is to get to 2% prevalence. So this is a middle road. If there was some concern 70% prevalence is too high, this is 40% prevalence, meaning 40% of the population then it gets infection. So that's those numbers by age group, just simple math, 40%. So you would have 1,034,621 persons in Dallas County that have infection. We know the age-specific case fatality rates. We know that at older age groups, it's about, for over 80, almost 15%. you can see, again, multiplying those case fatality rates by each of those age categories for the number that are infected, then you can get the expected deaths for each of those age groups. If you just add those numbers, then if we had 40% prevalence, we would anticipate 13,603 deaths in Dallas County alone. And yesterday's figures were for statewide for Texas. This is now specific with Dallas County population.
And Dr.
So,
Wong,
yes.
you also talked about, well, and I guess it's just receiving it this morning, John Wiley Price, you're going to talk about, you talk about the deaths and all, but you're also going to talk about the beds, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Pass.
So again, at the bottom, so that's with a 40% prevalence based on the information we have from other countries, from China, the case fatality rates, that's what would be expected. Simple math. Next, on the bottom is the impact on hospitals and ICU beds. So we're saying with 40% prevalence, there was 1,034,621 persons infected. On the bottom part, currently as of last Friday, the report from Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council, essentially we have 3,922 non-ICU beds available. Next column, we have 416 ICU beds available. Now, the data, some of the data show that about 15% of persons who are infected require hospitalization. We're going to use an even more conservative number and say 7.3% of persons who are infected are hospitalized. So you multiply that 7.3% times the 1,034,621 persons that would be infected with a 40% prevalence. And so that would be 75,527 persons that would require hospitalization. As you can see, comparing to the 3,922 available non-ICU beds and the 416 ICU beds, that would be a shortage of 71,189 beds. Now, in the second scenario, which is requiring the stay home or dramatic implementation of social distancing, stay home, stay safe, to achieve a 2% prevalence of infection in our community by people implementing this really, diligent social distancing. So you do the same numbers, and again, 2% of the population for each of those age groups is in that third column. There would be 51,000 persons infected. Multiplying those case fatality rates for each age group, you can see the expected number of deaths in each age group. We would be down to 681. Then if you again look at the impact on hospitals and ICU beds, taking those 51,731 persons expected to be infected, times, again, a conservative hospitalization rate of 7.3%, there would be 3,776 persons hospitalized, which would be within our capacity for available hospital beds. So you're comparing being within our capacity of almost a little over 4,000 beds versus needing 75,000 beds.
Why was the 7%?
Dr. Daniels?
I'm sorry, Dr. Daniel, what is the, why did you pick the 7% hospital?
That was, again, a conservative estimate. There is some, that was actually what was used in the imperial, in the model that you saw yesterday for those hospitalization
Why did they
rates.
pick 7%?
Pardon?
Why did they pick 7%?
There is some, again, it's a little more conservative. It just accounts for, that's what they used on that estimate. It's a conservative estimate.
Dr. Wong, quick question on the conservative.
Commissioner.
I'm sorry, Commissioner J.J. Koch, District 2. Regarding the stay home, stay safe, 2% prevalence, the hospitalization rate at 7.3% still gets us this 3,700. In respect to ICU beds, if 10% of those cases are severe, we're looking at 370, so we probably don't swamp our ICU beds. What cases are severe enough to require that ICU beds? Are we still in danger of running out of ICU beds even under this stay home, stay safe scenario?
And part of this, the modeling and the concerns are if the system gets overwhelmed, then if it also affects the healthcare workers and our capacity for supporting all of those things. So, there's multiple variables with this for consideration, but right now, if we achieve that, everyone were protected. We had adequate PPE. This is why getting adequate PPE for our healthcare workers is one of the top priorities to protect our healthcare workers also. Simultaneously, during this time, to be protecting our healthcare system, that is what we need to be doing also.
Is it a second or third order priority to make sure that we have the ability to shift to more ICU beds, essentially, create more spaces for those? I mean, is that?
Well, that's certainly, if we don't implement these, very severe social distancing practices early on to keep us down there, you can see how the numbers can explode and can overwhelm the system.
Well, but my question is this, though. Should we be doing something right now to give ourselves more ICU bed capacity?
Absolutely. I mean, getting more ventilator capacity, all of that needs to be, because it's dependent on our successfully getting this prevalence down. That's what we're trying. That's why these are so important. But if it goes higher, this is the numbers, again, just straight math looking at our population.
Thank you.
Dr. Garcia?
Yeah, yes.
Elba Garcia, District 4. Thank you, Dr. Huang. I mean, first of all, let me thank you, your staff, and your leadership during this whole process. I know that it's been hard because when we started and we talk about, hey, explain me what happens when you don't do anything, when you do something in the middle, and when you actually implement these measures. And this is exactly it. And I want to thank you because this is something that people can understand. If we have a 40% prevalence, as is explained here, we will have a shortage of bed by 71,189 people. We will not ever be able, even if, like Commissioner Koch, you say, and rightly so, what are we doing right now to be sure that if we get to a point of shortage, we won't be in this situation? But I think this is something that even the Lieutenant Governor can understand, that if we get to this point, we won't be able to do anything. So, and just my question, Dr. Wong, for you today is, you talk about the shortage being predicted by April 31st. Is this 2% prevalence at that point, or what is your timeline for what we have here in the news for these scenarios?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. That has to be maintained.
Okay.
It shows if we get above that, that's going to be the numbers. If we get to a higher percentage that are infected in the community, then that would be based on the estimated percentage that require hospitalization, then we would reach those numbers that are requiring that care.
So I can say publicly that, the shelter in place, social distances will allow us to hopefully get the curve into a plateau a lot earlier than April 31st. Is that a true statement?
Yes, I mean, if it's implemented well and successfully. I mean, that's where I think what they did in Wuhan, and in that model you saw yesterday, they actually even achieved it down to, 1%. So, and I do have, the 7.3% from the model, from the Imperial College model, it's actually, they note that the estimates vary quite a bit by age, but they have weighted it by actual USA demographics. So there's explanation for that in the Imperial College model of how they use 7.3%. Yeah. So again, accounting for USA demographics to adjust for that. But it's still conservative because, again, some of them are higher.
And
one more thing. When will we have a better idea, Dr. Juan? What's your estimate? I know it's very hard, and I'm asking you, something that is an estimation 100%. But when do you think we can see if we are, in which percentage of the prevalence are we in a period of weeks? as we start more testing.
You know, as there
results
is
coming.
more testing available, testing widely available, there will certainly be more information, to help with this.
Because I think Commissioner Koch made a very good point, and it's the fact that at what time do we start, preparing for additional beds in case that we're going to.
I think that we should be
we're
doing
already
that.
doing that.
We need to, this is the
We're
time we
already
need to
doing
be
that.
preparing for that now. We need to be getting as much PPE, getting prepared for as much ventilator capacity. I know that there are efforts, in that
Many
pipeline.
industries that are trying to help.
Yeah, But
And
this isn't what we're trying to prepare for.
Correct. So are we allocating any funds? Do we need to allocate now with our partners, with Parkland, with the hospitals organizations for more beds?
The plan, like John Wiley Press, the plan. That's, we keep hearing this anecdotally and prevalence and 2%. Where is the plan? New York is going into Jarvis Center. Everybody seems to be setting up additional overflow. I understand where we're trying to get to. Where is that plan?
And there is planning certainly with the hospitals, the Dallas-Fort Worth Healthcare Council or Hospital Council, others. I know that there is work certainly on the surge plan, all of that. But so there are efforts absolutely in the community working on this.
Dr. Wong, J.J. Koch, I think by no later than the end of the week, we need locations, situs, number of beds that can be placed there, and the dollars it costs. I think the public needs that right now. So it can't be just, someone's planning it right now. By the end of the week, we need, where are the beds, the number of beds, how much it's going to cost.
And
so
how
we
long
can- So we can deploy.
And how long it will take to stand them up.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing places where others have stood hospitals up over and convert them over the weekend. What we're saying is that we need that kind of information and logistics as to where it's going on. Say there's a plan on surge is not acceptable.
And what are the guidelines, Elba Garcia, District 4, and what are the guidelines, Dr. Juan? Because I understand that people are starting to, call us and say, hey, we have 2 hospitals that are empty. And I've been saying, hey, I know that we have hospitals empty, but what are the guidelines for me to put up a hospital that has been vacant for many years, make it work, while other cities are doing convention centers, they're doing tents, they're doing anything, and all that is going to, take a cost and a planning that my point today is that we need to start planning now. I know and I understand, and I want to thank you for these, the spread and prevalence, because this helps many people to understand why this is an emergency versus not doing anything. But I also would like to see, from here on, I don't want to be in the position of not at 2%, but at, 10%, and we will still be in a situation that will be overwhelmed.
Okay.
And there is extensive planning going on, and others can present more of that.
Okay.
Last but not least, we never got the letter from the Medical Society that we requested on Monday. Would you please be sure that
Or the amendment with regards to some of the business that we talked about, Judge. I know you're still on the call. So we didn't get the Medical Society ask nor the amendment. And I know I did send you an email along with all of my colleagues with regards to a certain industry. But again, that's your call. But we need to see that amended. I looked at your amendment order and tried to make a comparison, didn't see any difference.
And this is Phil Wong again, just, this highlights the importance of quick, early action and very somewhat extreme action to get to the social distancing numbers.
This is Teresa Daniel, District 1. Would also like to make comment that just from my talking with people and being in communication with Dr. Wong and other people involved, that there are a number of entities partnering with a lot of different groups that will that are currently addressing a variety of stages. We need ICU beds, but we also need kind of transitional beds for people who are infected and would be separated from their families, and special locations for those people who have no housing at this particular. And I would like to encourage all of those groups by the end of the week also to have their particular plans, because it is a multi-stepped process that will be most effective in protecting a greater number of lives, but then also addressing the very specific parts of what the virus is.
Yeah, but that's the reason, Dr. John Wiley Price, that's the reason for the plan. The plan should encompass everything. That's the plan. Okay, so by the end of the week, we'll be able to give the court a status on the plan.
However, we can help with those partners if there's anything that we can do, obviously, there.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
for the public, make sure, Dr. Wong, please post this on your website.
And I
so
know it's on
those-
Judge Jenkins' Twitter
Yes.
last night, but.
yeah, we saw it. Okay. Okay, that being said, item 45 is before the court with the amendment to the Dallas County Emergency Management Plan that basically talks about the failure to comply with the emergency management plan or with the rule, order, or ordinance adopted under this plan is an offense punishable by fine, $1,000, and confinement in jail for a term to and including 180 days. And as the judge said, that's just strictly, hopefully strictly to talk about compliance. What says the court?
Move to accept.
Moved by Dr. Daniels,
Second.
second by Dr. Garcia. Is there any other unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by the usual sign of voting. Those who oppose, same sign. Chairs in the affirmative. Okay, thank you, Dr. Wong. Thank you, Judge. Yes,
Thank you.
the vote was 4-0 or 5, I guess if you count the judge. I'll take it the judge voted. Judge, you did vote for it, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll assume, okay, it was 5-0, it was a unanimous vote. Okay? Thank you. That being said, the next item that is before us is the consent agenda. What says the court on the consent agenda?
I will, Commissioner, as always, you know, the personnel, I would like to pull it
Pull
up.
it, okay. Without the personnel, the rest of the consent agenda is before the court.
Move approval.
It's moved by Dr. Garcia, second by Dr. Daniels, that the consent agenda, notwithstanding personnel, which is 8, be approved. Is there any unreadiness?
One quick attaboy in this, Gail Davis is full-time. She was that individual we were trying to recruit in the telecom space. We got it. Awesome. Thank you very much for getting that done.
Okay. That was Commissioner Koch. Okay. That being said, all those in favor, let it be known by usual sign of voting.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, same sign. Chairs in the affirmative. The matter before us is the personnel items, i.e. 8.
Recognizing that the departments are doing due diligence to recruit and hire the best staff for Dallas County, I move to accept this.
Second.
It's moved by Dr. Daniels, second by Commissioner Koch, that the personnel items be accepted.
And then I just have to put on the record, Commissioner, I understand that the staff is working on it, but the numbers still don't reflect the hiring practices that reflect Dallas County population, ethnicity, and for that reason, the Juvenile and Sheriff Department, I will vote no.
Okay. Hearing it's a motion and a second. All those in favor with regards to the personnel items, vote by saying aye. Aye. Those who oppose,
No.
by a vote of 3 ayes and 1 no, personnel matters are approved. With regards to...
Mr. Chair, can we just double check to make sure the judge is voting or not voting at this point?
it was my understanding that the judge wasn't, after this, wasn't voting at all. Judge, are you still on the line? Okay, that was my understanding.
Let the record reflect that the judge.
Yeah, right.
absent.
Yeah, is absent, yes. Thank you. With regards to items J, but that's before the court, J 1 through 43. 43?
Yes.
I'm going to pull,
Oh, it's just J 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and then.
you're right, you're exactly right. Because I got pulling. J 1 and 2, you're exactly right. And I'm pulling item J 2 from the agenda, and primarily because the SBE language and scoring is completely wrong. And so I am pulling that matter for 2 weeks until we revisit the scoring on item J2. So item J1 is before us.
Move to approve.
J1 to 43, Commissioner?
No, just J, go to K.
J1. Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
Okay, J1 is before us, a move by Dr. Daniels,
I second.
second by Dr. Garcia. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of J1, let it be known by the usual sound of voting.
Aye.
Those who oppose, same sign. Chairs in the affirmative. Let the record reflect that it is a unanimous vote of those present. Now K1 through K44 is before us.
Move to approve orders K1 through K45.
No, K40.
It's K44.
44.
I didn't do
45, we
44.
pull.
45, we already voted on.
Okay, I got a motion. Somebody want to talk to me about 6,
You have a
K6?
motion and a second.
Got a second from Commissioner Garcia. Okay, 6, Mr.
Warren, I believe, is on the line.
Okay, Mr. Warren? Mr. Warren, are you present?
People.
Okay, let's, I'm trying to give him,
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if you want to hold this one. for two-
okay, I'll hold that one. That is K6. Is there any other matter?
Well, that means the motion has been amended
Amended
for
to,
orders 1 through 44, holding item number 6.
For 2 weeks.
well, yeah, just, yeah.
For future vote.
Right. I'll just pull it for a future vote. And it just, I mean, I don't know, I guess the Dallas County Records and Resource Center, now, if none of my colleagues have any real issue with that,
Do you, Mr. Chair?
well, you know, it's, you know, when you name thing in Dallas County, we can call it Homeland Security, we can call it everything in the world. I recognize that a lot of the records and a lot of people are housed there. I mean, if the court has no real issues, I won't, but I just,
If records, because we have another building that is called records.
records building,
You know,
exactly.
could be, confusing for people.
Right.
Probably Dallas County Resource Center, but there's another entity with that
Or
same name.
center, that's correct.
So, I mean, my only question
Convoluted.
when I read it was exactly the same
Same, yeah.
thing.
Okay.
Could be
Let me just pull it,
confusing.
I'm gonna pull it for 2 weeks, Mr. Martin, only because, as I said, it's a little confusing.
Yeah, it's redundant.
It
Yes,
can
sir.
be confusing to people if
It
you
can.
say, can you go to the Dallas County Records Building? They're going to think it's downtown. If you say Records and Resource Center and you Google Records and Resource, it's going to take you to
That
two
was-
different
that was my
places.
concern.
That's exactly.
So, I mean, I did think about it, and then I saw, but I didn't have a chance to talk to Mr. Warren,
Okay.
other than all the marriage licenses that
I got
they're
it.
not being issued. With that being said, I only wanted to say thank you to the District Attorney's Office about the approval of the TriStar risk management. I know, Mr. Roden, that is something that you wanted to do for quite some time also, to be able to track. If this is it, Mr. Roden, please just, confirm, but what I understood by reading this item was that we can log cases and how much money has been spent in the legal department, which I think is something that was needed. And I remember you talking about it, and if this is it, well, I mean, congratulations. I think it's something that as management of Dallas County, we would like to follow through.
And Mr. Roden?
Yeah, please,
Judge
Mr.
Roden, I'm sorry.
Russ Roden, that's really the Dallas County Schools issue, but we do have the software to do the tracking, and in fact, I'm happy to announce that, but for recent developments that have taken over some of our resource time, we will be issuing our first comprehensive claims report to the Commissioner's Court that will go back and cover all the way to starting with January 1st of 2017.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
But I do want to comment to planning and development, the supporting City of Dallas neighborhood empowerment zones, and I think most of those are, they established this in January 2020, and the affected portion of the cities, Skillman Carter, the TOD, the sports arena, Fort Worth Avenue, Grand Prairie South, and Vickery Matter tax increment finance districts. I had gone over this.
It's Grand Park South, Commissioner, not Grand Prairie, but I mean.
Okay,
yeah.
it's Grand, okay,
Grand
you're
Park
right.
South.
Okay. But I do want to thank Mr. Lesberg. I know we've had a lot of questions going back and forth, but this is supposed to be nothing but an enhancement to dealing with real property tax abatements by the City of Dallas under the city's Neighborhood Empowerment Zones program. So just wanted to comment and thank him for all of his work.
This is Teresa Daniel from District 1. I would just like to make comment that looking at the 44 items before us, 43 items before us, that Dallas County continues to do the job that we were all elected to do, and that is the variety of public works projects, of trails projects, of just keeping the business going for the betterment of Dallas County. So thanks to all of the staff under a stressful time, continuing to do their jobs.
Okay, and Dr. Garcia?
Yes, Dr. Garcia, District 4, item 38 is a purchasing item, and the only thing I want to put onto the record is that as you go through the agenda item, there's overall, there's a comment from our staff saying that this contractor in particular needs overall improvement. And
Yeah.
it's about uniforms, and I have here some of those complaints from our law enforcement personnel, and I just, want to put it on the record that, this is a 6-month extension. Probably we should be working in getting another vendor if the department is not happy with the
It's
way.
my understanding from the jail sanitation meeting and from the director of purchasing that he is in fact meeting with regards with the affected departments to deal with that issue. And Mr. Martin is purchasing around because I've been talking to the court about this. I've been having some real trepidation. And agenda item number 40 is to authorize the issuance of the request for proposal for the Ryan White HIV Part B services in Dallas for Sherman Denison Health Service delivery. Well, first of all, I got a couple of issues. First of all, there's only one provider in that area. It's historically been one provider in that area. So why, first of all, are we issuing an RFP for that? Number two, the Ryan White Part B grant cycle starts on April the 1st. So why is the RFP just now being issued less than 2 weeks from the end of the contract? And I think the court knows where I don't want to pull it. I do want to amend it though, because historically, the Dallas Health Service Delivery area and the Sherman-Denison Health Service Delivery basically compete for the funds during the same RFP and at the same time. So why is this area being singled out and delayed? We released, and this court remembered my ink with regards to the fact that we released this RFP last August. And we remember we did a rebid in November. Mr. Martin, I'm having some real issues. I don't know where purchasing is, but adding the carve-out funding for this area would have, all they had to do was do it all at one time. And then here we are talking about rebidding and doing a 6-month extension. And the one we did in November, we have not awarded that. And it's for April the 1st is when, the grant cycle starts. I want to know, with regards to this bid, and the court has heard me before, I had issues last year, what are we doing? And I'm not putting it on, I don't know whether it's Dr. Wong or whether, Health and Human Services, or whether that's purchasing. Grant cycle, April 1st, here we are calling out the only provider in Sherman-Denison in Grayson County, and we're doing it 2 weeks before the grant cycle. We still have not awarded November, and so I'm trying to figure out why. The proposals, again, were submitted over 3 months ago in early December, and yet the awards are still pending. Why?
Problems with it?
Well, I don't know, Dr. Garcia. If the court will recall, the problem I had the last time, everyone was poised, made the submission, and purchasing asked us to pull it down because supposedly, a provider did not make it timely. Okay, then we rebid it. Okay, so we rebid it. Here we are, 2 weeks before the grant cycle starts, and we have not issued and so today we've been asked on item 14 to extend the current Part B state services rebate contract that was supposed to end this month with all the funded recipients for just 3 more months. This is not making sense to me.
Mr. Chair, Darrell Martin, County Administrator. Mr. Frosch is on the line. I took down some notes, but I'll make sure we get answers to those questions that you posed. And Dr. Garcia, item number 38, this is just a short-term extension as we prepare to go out to bid for new uniforms. We've heard that all the complaints regarding the uniforms, so we will be going out to bid for those.
Okay, so my question is going to be is, in the midst of this public health crisis, here we are issuing a brand new RFP. That's number one. And number two, why doesn't Dallas County Health and Human Services just extend the contract with the, sub-recipients, in the Sherman-Denison area, not for 3 months in the middle of everything we've got going on, extended for a year. They're the only provider there, and so, it seems unreasonable to give, given the crisis that's going on with this COVID-19, that the county can bid this out next cycle. You know, this is a small rural clinic. They had limited staff. And ladies and colleagues, each time I've said it, you know, do you realize how much energy and effort goes into the preparation of one of these RFPs? Again, that's the reason I was just livid when we basically put the first one back out on the street. These are small staffs. It is burdensome for them to try to respond to these RFPs, and especially in life. So I guess what I'm asking for is an amendment on 14 from the maker and the second. I mean, why would we do 3 months? Your health is the only provider in Sherman-Denison. So why would we not do a year? Why would we labor them with that, Mr. Frost, or anyone else, with regards to this matter? You know the concerns. I've expressed them to you that I've had. Here we are getting ready to go into the new grant cycle, and we still have not awarded the primary bid.
If it's the court's pleasure, Darrell Martin, we can hold 14 and 40, continue with the agenda and close, and I'll get answers to those questions. If it's something that can be held, we'll hold those, and then or come back from close and revote.
And amend them. I mean, Mr. Martin, I understand. We're already holding, but my problem is I've got a small provider with limited staff in Sherman, Denison, and all I'm saying is let's not put them through this in the current crisis for 3 months extension. Let's give them a year. They're the only ones anyway. They've always been the only ones up there.
Elba Garcia, so we are holding them, Mr. Martin, just so I understand when I read it again in 2 weeks. So we're holding them so we can give them a longer period of time, Commissioner. That's what your point is.
That's a recommendation from the
Okay,
Commissioner.
sounds good. I mean, it doesn't affect any of the current funding or anything.
That's what I'd like to find out, so while we're
Because
continuing
I don't
with
want
the
to pull
agenda and
anything if I'm
close.
going to make it more complicated for them, or there's going to be any
Right.
kind of
And I'm not
holding of
trying,
the
yeah,
funding.
and I'm not trying to pull it, Dr. Garcia, John Molly Price, I'm not trying to pull it. I'm trying to amend it
Okay,
because it
gotcha.
just doesn't make sense.
Okay, for
I'm gonna check
clarification.
on that.
I will check on that before we conclude today, so you can come back and vote on those 2 items after we can finish close, so.
For clarification, the 2 items are number 14 and number
40.
38.
40. She just
So
made a comment
38
on
and 40?
40. No,
And
14 and
I
40.
said 14 and 38?
No, 14 and 40.
40, okay.
Yes,
Just wanted to
ma'am.
clarify
Yeah, she just-
which
yeah, she
ones
just-
we're talking about.
Yes, she just made a comment on 38, and I was explaining where.
That one is going to pass.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, sounds
Okay,
good.
okay. So they're removed, yes, the question, they're removed from the consideration. 14 and 40 until such time.
Should we amend?
Yes, that's what I'm at.
So the original.
So motion to amend the
Has
original, to remove items
14 and 40.
K 1 through 44, removing 14 and 40,
Okay,
And 6 for 2 weeks, though.
and 6 for 2 weeks.
And I approve the motion.
second, Dr. Garcia approves. The
Six.
Commissioner Koch moved and removed 14 and 40, and Dr. Garcia seconded it and also agreed to the removal.
And 6, Commissioner.
And 6. Yes, and 6, the 3 of them, okay? Okay, now, everybody ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, let it be known by usual sign of voting.
Aye.
Those who oppose, same sign. Chairs in the affirmative. Okay.
And now, Commissioner, on the miscellaneous and the travel.
Okay.
I have a few comments.
Yes,
First
ma'am.
of all, thank you to Judge Jenkins for hiring temporary bilingual staff. As you can see, we've been changing ordinances the last 3 days since Sunday, and as good as my staff is and as fast as I can do it, I'm also have to respond to a lot of information and constituents' comments. So thank you for hiring additional bilingual staff. Hopefully, they do know how to write Spanish, because we really need them. I hope that if they are good, they will become part of the staff of Dallas County, because when we have situations and emergencies and pandemics that we're having right now, people want information in Spanish and other languages as fast as possible. And I have done my best, God knows, to be in every single Spanish station and every single Spanish venue to be sure that people are informed about these changes. But I'm just one person, and I really want to thank him for doing this, and hopefully they will be part of emergency personnel in the future. Second, traveling. Mr. Martin, we suspend traveling till the end of May. I was dismayed to see all the traveling requests, and some of these traveling requests are for a week, in Houston and other areas where I will understand probably we shouldn't be traveling, and nevertheless, any of the staff. So not to mention that for financial reasons, I think it's, if I understood that the memo was already sent, that traveling in Dallas County, particular for Dallas County staff, in every single office was, especially at this time, not allowed. But as you can see, the travel briefing is just immense. I was really consider most of the travel that I saw as not essential. And of course, some places like Houston, unincorporated areas, a national and then a federal convention, which took the whole week. So I hope that you can go ahead and, send a memo to all the people that are having traveling schedule in the next 2 months. That is not essential. Thank you.
I'll yield. JJ.
Commissioner Koch, I just have one thing on item M that was brought to me. Dr. Daniel, I just have a question about information technology, renewal of IBM SPSS. Someone brought that to me, and the concern was, what is it being used for? They and I were kind of unaware of what data sets would be large enough for statistical analysis, and the fear was that perhaps they're being used for electoral purposes. So I wanted to make sure that just got that out there on the record, and you can tell us.
Yeah, SPSS is Teresa Daniel, District 1. SPSS is a data management tool, and one of the things we've been reviewing just the amount of data coming out of criminal justice. Okay. It has, it's a data management tool. It has a lot.
Yeah, and so no voter data has been placed in that software as a service.
Voter data is in there already from elections. That's just a part of the work that we do.
So was it uploaded into this instance of the SAS account?
It has not been up. It's just data that's available. That's.
Well, we expose the data to their processing. So at some point, those data sets have to be uploaded to IBM's servers. This is a software as a service, correct?
Right.
Right. And Dallas County writ large does not have it. You have the license for it.
It's a data management tool that I'm very familiar with.
Right, but you are your office.
Yeah, I requested the license for this to be able to better dig into the data management issues that go on throughout Dallas County.
Okay, and so your office are there any other offices within Dallas County that are accessing it or using the license?
I understood that there has been interest by other offices to use it.
Okay.
After they've seen the reports that we've been able to generate.
What are the data sets that have been uploaded to use this tool?
To the best of my knowledge, we've really been looking at the criminal justice data on just the process that's been going on in the inmate booking through the end of the process.
Okay, what other data sets have been, because you said that the voter
I just
data,
said what, to the best of my knowledge, what's been uploaded.
okay, but you said that the voter data was there. Is that correct?
It's available just because in Dallas County, elections, is the repository of voter data.
Right, so how did the voter data from our election side get into IBM servers in the software as a service?
I'm not sure of the distinction you're making because it's available, and I'm not, just because it's available.
So, did you intentionally upload data sets?
No.
Okay, so it accesses.
No, it's available.
That's all I'm saying.
You point the service to databases that are both hidden and exposed to the internet?
No. It's
So-
all, these are all internal processes on
So-
secure Dallas County devices.
All right, so
I'm
the-
not sure the points you're making.
So this is a software as a service, and you know, it's an IBM service. You access the portal through the web, correct? You don't have a standalone, you know, machine by machine data point. Rather, you know, you go open a web browser and you know, do your
So what
data
you're
entry.
saying is that I'm exposing election data by accessing it over the web?
I just want to know how the data gets into the tool. Because the tool's processing does not exist in our servers. It exists in an IBM server. It's their software as a service, correct?
You mean SPSS is on the IBM server?
Yeah, it's their tool. It's a software as a service, just like,
Oh, now I get what you mean, yeah.
yeah, SPSS is a software as a service.
I mean, it's just like all of our Microsoft products.
You have it downloaded on your machine.
The SPS program?
Program.
Yes.
And you, okay. So you can expose it to any of our internal data, but there's no external server that our data is exposed to.
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. All right, so that.
No, it's all internal on Dallas County devices,
Okay.
which have a very, very robust security system.
Okay, just, you know, if exposing some of our data to IBM externally would be troubling.
It's like any other Microsoft product that we have. Does that mean that everything that we do using Microsoft would be exposed to this?
Well,
No.
those Microsoft programs are not external. They're not software as a service. They're downloaded onto the local hard drives.
So what's the difference?
If the operating system is operating somewhere in another server, necessarily the data has to go through.
But
or it makes a
that's the
call
whole
to.
basis of how licenses are done. I think
There's-
you're going down a
there's-
rabbit trail that has nothing to
No,
do
no, no,
with
there's
reality.
two types of softwares. There's on-premise software, which you download, and internally is within your entire system. It never exposes itself to the internet, and it can make update calls from the internet, but its processing is housed on the machine or on a
Absolutely.
database.
Absolutely.
But software as a service like Gmail, for example, all those databases, all your emails are, you know, stored in Google's, you know, where Google is. From what I understand of SPSS, you upload the data to IBM. The manipulations take place on their
No,
servers.
it's totally on local devices.
And it's on a local server because, I mean.
It is everything is done within
Everything's
Dallas
local.
County
Okay.
security protection.
Okay. And
Let the chair, if I can just kind of intercede here. I do understand the ask, and what I'll do is ask security with regards, and I understand the question that is before the court. And we'll just ask security so we'll all know that whether or not the ask is in fact violating security. That's the ask that's before us. And I understand, Commissioner Down, your point, but I also understand what the ask is. So we'll ask security, IT.
IT security can then look into this and
Yes.
assure you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's a problem. Okay. That being said, that there are still supposed to be callers that are on the line. Before the court, we will take up the speakers who have registered. And there is, if Monica Jackson at 219 Wood Hill in Mesquite, the subject is handling paperwork for Dallas County. Ms. Jackson, are you still with us and on the line? All the rules have been read with regards to the speakers. And so, Ms. Jackson, are you on the line? Ms. Monica Jackson? Ms. Monica Jackson. Sorry, we had all the matters of the court. Ms. Cynthia Smith, I called you earlier with regards to it at 1084 Cove Hollow Drive in Cedar Hill. Ms. Smith, are you still with us? Ms. Smith, are you still with us? Okay. And finally, I have Mr. Michael Rosen, Dallas Area Interface, 7114 Curran, CURRIN Drive, moratorium on eviction. Mr. Rosen.
I am here, yes.
Hey, Mr. Rosen, the rules have been read. You have 3 minutes to present. You can proceed.
I'm having a hard time hearing, but I guess you said it's okay for me to go ahead?
Yes, sir. You go right ahead on, and we can hear you.
What?
Yes, proceed, Mr. Rosen.
I'm sorry. Can you, I'm going to start if that's okay.
Mr. Rosen, you could go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Dallas Area Interfaith is a nonpartisan, diverse group of religious congregations, schools, and other nonprofits in the Dallas metropolitan area. We represent over 90,000 metropolitan Dallas residents. DAI is a listening organization. Today, what we hear from our members are stories of crushing vulnerability. The sole providers of many of the families are service workers living paycheck to paycheck. They have lost or will soon lose their jobs due to the COVID-19 crisis. What for some was a life near the edge soon will be barely sustainable existence. Further, losing the roof over their heads will have a devastating impact on these families. It will also affect our entire community as they are forced more into the shadows where the virus will perhaps thrive. For that reason, we are here to applaud and support Judge Jenkins' proposed amended order issued March 16, 2020, which continues the suspension of eviction hearings and writs of possessions for at least the next 60 days to prevent renters from being displaced. We strongly urge the Dallas County Commissioners Court to vote its approval. As we stated above, this decision affects the lives of many of our members, as they are disproportionately, at least for the moment, threatened by the uncertainty in the economy. In addition to the 60-day suspension, our members, like all responsible members of our society, are also very concerned about minimizing the impact the virus is having on their lives and on our society as a whole. They understand, as we all do, that reducing the destructive impact of this virus requires social distancing and access to testing when needed. But right now, there is no clarity on how the most vulnerable can qualify for testing and where they can go for a test. Therefore, we propose that the county provide free testing for any Dallas resident at drive-up facilities across the metro, similar to what other cities and counties have done. Both Bishop Gregory Kelly of the Catholic Diocese of Dallas and Rabbi David Stern of Temple Emmanuel have expressed their support for the proposed amended order. Finally, we recognize that the Dallas County Commissioners and the City of Dallas can only do so much. We agree with Judge Jenkins. Our elected leaders, including Governor Abbott and other state and federal officials, must display the kind of leadership necessary to increase access to health care, availability of food, utilities, and ensure a roof over the heads of our most vulnerable citizens. We thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Thank you for holding. Colleagues, that concludes this agenda of the Commissioner's Court. We will retire into executive session for those matters that are approved by law under 551.07 of the Open Meetings Act. It is there. At this particular time, we will recess into executive session.
Commissioners, we're going to hold executive session in this room in order to keep with the social distancing guidelines.
Okay,
So we will need 5 minutes to transition. We have to shut off mics and speakers in order to transition into closed session.
like to put a Latino name there too.
Call it Control Trina.
Trina what?
No. I mean, he oh, you're right. Yeah, I mean, it was his building. He bought the building.
What about, I mean, if nothing else, county clerk or this, building?
Everything's coming back to start.
I one time gave him a name for the building. I don't remember which one I forgot. I'll go and look into that.
Well, yeah, it's launch tradition.
It Calmer bought the building and,
The problem with this name is that there's two entities with the same name.
oh, I understood, that's when I pulled it.
Well, I thought about it, but then again, I just,
Well, but it just, like I said, it was too
you
confusing.
say,
Can't have it down.
We're back on up here. He got
photo up there. What do you mean? Not accurate, is it?
I think that's what they want to call in, though. No, that's what they want.
This is what was reported.
Hey, Daryl, I can't tell what's going on. Are we still enclosed?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Well, we're getting ready to try to come out of close. Yeah, go back and open. No, we're not yet. We're trying to get ready.
Okay. Hey, anything that needs to happen and open? If not, I may jump off.
Well, only thing we need to deal with 14 and 40. I pulled them.
Oh, okay.
With regards to Sherman Dennison and the one clinic up there and 40.
Okay, but are we now passing those?
Well, you know, I'm trying to figure out what they wanted to do with, 14, I was trying to amend it from the 3 months to 1 year because they're the only provider. Dr. Wong told us that the only reason that, they were having some trepidation was because of, there was supposed to have been an audit finding with regard to the health, the only clinic up there. So, for him just to throw that up to us, so what was the audit finding? That doesn't, and so he said, well, maybe in this crisis he wouldn't have any trouble. I just want to do it, it doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm sorry.
Just wait till.
Right, okay, they said I can't discuss it anymore. Okay. 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 Talking about $814,000 for new agents.
How much is it?
814,000. That's all I thought.
That's what I thought.
814. Yes,
Thank you.
If I hear that one more time.
You can open. You can open that.
Judge, we're back in the open session, having come from executive session discussing only those matters that are permitted by law, and the only matters that is before us now is Court Order 14, which had a 3-month extension with regards to this, and I wanted to know why were we doing a bid and adding only 3 months in terms of the expansion, as opposed to I was wanting to do a year. And so my proposal to the court is that again, it opens, the grant cycle starts on April the 1st. And this traditionally has been part of the overall grant cycle. I would want to amend Court Order 14 as opposed to giving them 3 months to give them a year with regards to their ability to perform. It's $814,000. And again, this is a small agency. Every time we charge them with having to do a grant, it takes resources. It's not as though they're getting millions of dollars. They're getting $814,000 total. So that's what I want to put on the table, Judge.
Okay, now, and who is, hang on a second, who is this? This isn't Sherman Dennison's
It is.
HIV money.
Yeah, but it is the Your Health Clinic, in Sherman and Dennison. They've always been a part of the Ryan White here, in Dallas. They've never had anything separate. And why we separated them out, I don't understand.
The Your Health.
I oversee, as you know, and appoint the Ryan White Planning Council, and the Planning Council directs funds. However, with Sherman and Dennison, there's certain set-asides to where, and I believe that is their only clinic up there.
It is.
Dr. Wong, could you tell us what the thought is and what the recommendation is? He's there. Bill, are you still on?
No, he's not on.
He's not here.
They've been texting back and forth and emailing back and forth. They're okay with the 1-year extension. Their recommendation is to go ahead and approve this as is and to come back at the next meeting with a 9-month extension for Sherman Dennison.
That would give me a chance to make sure I'm not running afoul of some federal regulation or HRSA or who knows what. Give them 3 months, and 2 weeks from now we give them the other 9 months. Would be my recommendation.
Right. And they did talk to Department of State Health Services, and they're okay with the 1 year. So in order to move this all along as one package, they recommend moving this forward, separating out Sherman Dennison for the next meeting and extending that for a full year, 9 additional months to 3 months.
Sounds good. Does that sound good to everybody?
I'll given the caveat that we're going to come back and revisit, I have no problem. Okay.
Does that agree with the section of administrative plan compliance says the 6-month extension?
No, it was really.
So the recommendations for a 3-month?
3 months for this one, and then come back for a full 9 months, just for Sherman Dennison at the next meeting.
Okay.
And then move.
Okay, I'll move it based on John Wiley Price. I'll move it.
Garcia, second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second, Judge.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Anything else?
That was 1440 also. 40 is the RFP.
14 and 40.
And again, my only concern with that is it really doesn't make sense in the middle of this crisis that here we are going out again for the RFP, Judge.
The department's okay with holding that and reviewing that, and we can come back with a recommendation in 2 weeks for the number 40 also, if that's okay with the court.
That's, Judge, that would be my preference, if we can pull it for a couple of weeks and then, and let them vet this thing out and think it out. Keep in mind, I had trouble with it last year when we pulled it the first time. Then we turned around and 3 months later, we were going to do it. And here we are 2 weeks out, 4 months later, and we still haven't done it. And I'm having real issues with it. So I just want to pull it.
Okay, you want to pull it?
Well, and the department's okay with pulling it. The department, they're okay with pulling it because they didn't answer a lot of questions.
So we're standing that number 14 and
Great,
40.
well, the commissioners asked to pull it. I don't see that it is an emergency item that would be harmed by pulling it for 2 weeks. Does anyone want to argue that it is? Otherwise, we'll consider that to be pulled.
Nope.
Okay. Judge, I think that concludes everything.
All right, the court stands adjourned. Thank everyone. Thank all of you for your hard work, and please stay safe.
Okay.